Oli London went on the H3 podcast to debate Ethan Klein on trans rights. So this should be fun. Oli London has recently joined the chorus of anti-trans voices online with his obsessive tweeting and the release of his book, Gender Madness, One Man's Devastating Struggle with Woke Ideology and His Battle to Protect Children. So it seems he's decided to add far-right grifter to his extensive list of identities. Previously he claimed to be transracial, which is not a thing, and he got all sorts of plastic surgery to try to look like a Korean pop star, but not like just a K-pop star, like a specific guy, Jimin from BTS. Bit of a weird thing to do. Then last year he came out as a gender-fluid trans woman and announced he was transitioning to a different K-pop star, Rosé from Blackpink.
My new name is Oli London, so I want to look like her, so I've just had all my surgery to look like Rosé. I still love Jimin, but I want to look like a girl, a Korean girl, just like Rosé.
But it's just not how any of this works. And then just a couple months after that, in his continued efforts to be a one-man clown show, he claimed a new identity, somehow, the most unexpected of them all, a Christian man. Which, for me, evokes a lot of questions, like, does he have some sort of punch card that he's trying to fill out? And what prize does he get for redeeming that? Hopefully today, we'll get some answers. On the other side of this debate, we have Ethan Klein of H3H3. Now, he has had some past controversies with the LGBT community, and because of that, I think some folks might be quick to dismiss him as not being an ally. And while I'm not excusing anything that he said in the past, I've personally always felt like he means well. He has a tendency to put his foot in his mouth when deciding to speak on LGBT topics that he was clearly not well informed on. He's made some distasteful jokes that definitely rely on or even perpetuate harmful homophobic and transphobic stereotypes unknowingly, but he then got very defensive when he was called out for it, and I think that's people's main problem, not so much with the specific stuff that he said wrong, but with how poorly he handled the criticism for it. And that makes sense. It's very frustrating. But I will also say that as a YouTuber, it can be very hard to differentiate people in your fan base offering up genuine criticism from people on the internet who just want to get mad and yell at you over anything. And with Ethan in these situations, I feel like after he steps away, cools down, processes, actually hears people out, he has always come back and apologized. So I think that's good. Overall, just from where I sit, Ethan Klein can get a little confused, but he's got the spirit. And at this point in time, he is a straight, cis man with one of the biggest online platforms, and he's using it to defend trans rights. So I think that's good too. And I am excited to see what these two people have to say about this topic. All right, this is an hour and 39 minutes long. I'm not trying to have a 2-hour YouTube video, so I'm definitely going to just stick to the highlights, but I'll put the full debate in the description below.
Hello, Oli.
Nice to see you. I like your outfit. Very French with the hat.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think you look wonderful too. We're kind of doing the same thing with our hats, aren't we?
Wasn't planned, but yeah.
Let me see your profile. Turn to the side. Let me see how it's looking.
Oh, I've actually quit surgery.
No. I mean the beanie. I'm not commenting on your surgery.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant my face.
The beanie's sitting,
This is a bit strange. I've actually never heard Oli speak. I've only just seen him make a spectacle of himself and be talked about in articles, and I don't know. That was just not what I was expecting. And the fact that he kind of thought Ethan was making fun of him and still went along and showed him his face, it's just already very different than what I had anticipated.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant my face.
Beanie's sitting,
Yeah, no, it's very cool.
So tell me, when was your last surgery? I'm curious.
So I actually,
Since you bring that up, now that you mention it,
quit surgery. Well, my last surgery was last April, but I've completely quit, and I'm never going to do surgery again. I was getting to a point, Ethan, where I would have probably died because I was going. I've probably gone under anesthetic 3 times every year. I was going under anesthetic, so it was like I could have died.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming on. I understand you're promoting a book entitled Gender Madness, which comes out August 1st. So congratulations. This is your first book. Very exciting.
Oh, it's not out yet. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess he's just been promoting it a lot. I thought it was already out.
Also, you wanted to announce that you're the new spokesperson for Fairness First PAC, Caitlyn Jenner's organization, who famously ran someone over. But that's actually not the
Holy shit. Who famously ran someone over. I love that he just throws that in there. Holy shit.
Most important thing about Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah, so basically I've got a new book coming out August 1st. And basically
Slow blink.
a lot of people have, obviously followed my journey over the years. And obviously I've struggled a lot with identity, and I had
God, that was just so good. Who famously ran someone over, Ollie. Holy shit. I'm honestly very shocked. Like I said, I've never heard this guy talk before. I was not expecting him to be able to form a coherent thought. Everything that I've seen of him is just the most ridiculous thing that I've ever seen. But he's actually very well spoken. I was expecting this to be more in line with like old frenemies content, because I feel like Oli London has, in the way that he presents himself in his whole public presence, the vibe is a little bit similar to Trisha Paytas, but the way that he's shown up is completely different from that. Very unexpected for me personally.
A lot of people have, obviously followed my journey over the years. And obviously I've struggled a lot with identity, and I had some very unhealthy behaviors, basically due to my addiction to surgery, my body dysmorphia, which later turned into gender dysphoria. So I really struggled with that, and it was unhealthy. And, I completely accept my past. I don't try to deny the person I was. And, I had some kind of bizarre behaviors, basically in an attempt to feel validated and to try and,
I had some bizarre behaviors. That is pretty astute. I think everyone would agree he's had some bizarre behaviors.
I'm really interested in your journey from you identified as a trans woman, right? And then you kind of found God and pivoted to becoming a white British Christian man. Do I have the synopsis correct?
Yeah, it sounds complicated, but yes, so I'm back to being myself now, and like finally found happiness. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just want to get a few things straight. So do you still identify as gay?
Yes, so I'm still gay, but I have dated girls before, and I still.
So you're bisexual, kind of more I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I feel like that interaction with Ethan, first of all, earlier I was talking about how he maybe has spoken out on some LGBT topics that he's not very well informed on. I think what just happened there is a pretty good example of that. All he's talking about is sexuality, saying he's gay, but he has dated girls before. And Ethan cuts in there and says, okay, so you're bisexual. I think queer people who have experienced questioning or having to come to terms with our sexuality would know that it's a bit more complicated and would not be very quick to assign an identity to someone. And I'm not calling Ethan problematic for doing that. I'm just saying that comes from a place of really not understanding the queer experience. Because being attracted to guys and still having dated a girl could be pansexual. That could be queer, which is just an umbrella term for anyone who's not cishet. It could also still just be gay. Lots of gay men have previously dated girls. But I think he was saying he still kind of does date girls. I don't really know. It's not really up to me. But I think that could give you a little bit of insight as to some of the issues that have happened in the past with Ethan Klein maybe being quick to speak on a queer topic when it might be more helpful for him to not,
And you don't identify as Korean anymore.
No, correct.
And then also, are you pro gay rights?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm part of the LGBT community. I support people. My issue is just what's happening to children and also the erosion of women's rights. But I fully support people as an adult making an informed decision to change themselves. But I don't support children being medically transitioned.
So you do support trans people in general.
So absolutely. So I support, people as an adult making a decision if they want to change and they're happy with that. But I feel that unfortunately the trans movement has been hijacked by a small but growing group of trans activists, which are basically pushing kind of an erosion of women's rights. So that's what I really take an issue with. There's a lot of trans people. I have a lot of trans friends. I know what it's like to be trans, that really just want to live their lives. And they're actually having a tough time now because of these trans activists. So my issue is with trans activists and not actual trans people.
Okay, so you say, here's a tweet of yours from just the end of last month, not that long ago. You say, the goal of the trans movement is not simply to exist. The goal is to erase women mutilate children, sexualize kids, take away free speech, class pedophilia as an identity, remove parental rights, indoctrinate kids, and they're willing to do violence to obtain their goals. When you say the trans movement, it seems to me that you are speaking generally about trans people having this goal. And when you say trans movement, I don't know exactly what you mean, because it seems that most trans people that I've seen, maybe with the exception of Caitlyn Jenner, seems to disagree with this, seems to identify as being parts of the trans movement. What is the trans movement? Who is a member of that? What is this organization?
Okay, so what I'm talking about here is the trans movement in the trans activist movement. So the people pushing these ideologies. So we see every single day. Just yesterday, the Texas state capitol was invaded. The trans protesters went there. We see women being attacked at women's rights rallies, physically attacked, and we're seeing this trans activist movement pushing for gender affirming care on kids, which is basically putting 11, 12-year-old kids on very harmful hormones. So that's what I'm talking about.
That's not happening. Like, children aren't going on hormones. At 11 and 12, you could go on puberty blockers. Those aren't harmful hormones. They just bind to the receptors that would signal to your body to start releasing hormones. He's honestly saying a lot here, but these are all talking points that we've heard a million times from the anti-trans far right as well as TERFs. And it's essentially just trying to frame trans people as some sort of movement, as an ideology, as a cult that is attacking people, trying to trans the children, and it's just not happening. We're protesting because our rights are actively being taken away. There are over 500 anti-trans bills currently in the US. And it's honestly a bit strange that this person who's mostly lived in London and Korea is so concerned with US politics. I mean, it's obviously a grift. This has just happened within like the last couple of months. But yeah, basically everything he's saying can be easily disproven with like a Google search. So hopefully Ethan will call him out on that.
The LGBT community is being hijacked by these radical
let
people.
me ask, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to address things you said already, right? So you say that the people who are demonstrating at the Texas Capitol are part of this trans movement who wants to, sexualize kids and this whole list of things. They were there to protest a bill, SB 14, that would ban gender-related treatment for minors. So these guys are, I guess, see that as an affront, as being transphobic. But you disagree, because what is minor? Anyone 17 and under? Do you believe that ever there would be a 17-year-old that needed gender-affirming care?
So minor is basically classified anyone under 18. And what these people were protesting against was the fact that Texas is trying to pass a law to ban hormones and puberty blockers and gender reassignment surgery being administered to children, basically.
Some would say that it's actually harming kids, right, to make it illegal to do this, because as you probably know, or I think you did at one point, is that gender affirming care on children is exceedingly rare. It's actually so rare that it's if to express like irreversible gender changes on children is something like, I've got the number here, 0.000493% of U.S. children aged 6 through 17 go through irreversible gender changes. In the cases where they do undergo it, it's usually to save their life, right? Because they might be suicidal, and they go through like panels, they go through multiple rounds of talking to psychiatrists and doctors. I guess I'm just curious, why is it you think that this is threatening kids instead of actually helping kids who are at high risk of hurting themselves?
So, Ethan, about 10 years ago, when gender affirming care was performed on whether that was minors or adults, there was a lot of checks and balances. Now it has become so easy. So they don't have the psychiatrist appointments anymore. They don't have, having to wait several years to transition. Now it's a very fast track process. And that's the real issue, because many of these teens, and we're seeing thousands of teens being transitioned and put on hormones. The number's really gone up in the last few years. Many of these teens are struggling with other issues. There's a high case, around 1 in 6 of these children have autism. They're being misdiagnosed. There's also kids with depression, bipolar, and they're being told it must be, all of these issues must be because they're in the wrong gender. and they are being fast-tracked.
God, there's so much here. Oh, there is not a gender clinic where a minor can walk in and just start hormones. Nobody is being convinced that they are trans by doctors because they have depression. Trans kids develop depression from gender dysphoria and then go and see a doctor. They talk to a psychiatrist. They get a referral. It takes a long time. And even then, we're talking about 16 and 17-year-olds. And it is by no means a fast-track process to get every kid that has any kind of issue onto hormones. And the anti-trans fixation on autistic people, it's just extremely ableist. Anyone trying to argue that autistic people can't have a say in their own identities, like these are people who see autistic people as not being capable of making their own decisions, and that is just false.
There was a case in Missouri at the St. Louis Children's Hospital, and basically a whistleblower unveiled that they only required like one session with a therapist to get a child on hormones and puberty blockers. So that's the issue when a system is being exploited. And
all right, here's a fun fact. I've been on testosterone for almost 10 years. I came out as trans when I was 16 and I started T at 17. And back then, even 10 years ago, I was only required to have one therapy session. But within that therapy session, the therapist that I spoke to specialized in gender issues and was able to look at the greater context of my life and the fact that I had been out and openly living as a guy. And I was very aware that this is something that I had been wanting to do for many years before I ever made the decision to move forward with it. Because that context is important. That's why there's an evaluation. And within that, he was able to decide, okay, this is someone who checks all the boxes and is a candidate that I believe should move forward with HRT. And he was right. I don't regret my transition at all, and if I would have had to continue to wait, it would have continued to be very painful for me. So that's not unreasonable. That's not me manipulating the system. That's how the system works. If I was unsure of my gender, of course they wouldn't have written me a referral after one session. That's why the therapy exists. But when someone knows who they are and an expert on the subject can confirm that moving forward with HRT is what's best for them, that's what should happen. There's no reason that at 17 years old that I would be incapable of knowing my own gender. And for people to suggest that that person who I was a child who is incapable of comprehending the fact that my body would change as if I didn't just experience the wrong puberty already and know what that feels like, it's not it. That's not it.
Previously, as difficult as it was, because it's so hard when you're trans to struggle and to think every day that I'm trapped in the wrong body. It is horrific to go through that. But the problem is, years ago, they would have 2 to 3 years they would have to undergo of psychiatrist appointments, doctor's appointments in order to qualify for a transition. Now it has become so easy, and there are thousands of kids being fast-tracked and put on hormones, prescriptions, and some kids can now go to states like Colorado or Washington State, which have become sanctuary states, and they don't
Okay, wait. I also want to jump in there before he jumps in. I think that Oli might be confusing the NHS, like in England, with the American system, because I have never heard of there being a 2-year waiting period. I think he's talking about people having to wait 2 to 3 years just to get access to that care. But in the US, with the private healthcare, as far as I'm aware, that has never been a mandated waiting period of X amount of years. But like I said, I started T 10 years ago. There was not a mandatory waiting period of 2 to 3 years. At that point, I would have been an adult anyways. So it's like a non-issue. If there's a 3-year waiting period and the children, the minors who are going on T are around 16 and 17, then that negates the whole fucking thing. Strange. I don't think that's true.
You had said something about Jamie Reed's allegations, right? But that was debunked, right? Because the parents and the children there who actually were attending that facility actually told a completely different story. Have you read their account of that?
Yes, so I saw recently that they did an internal investigation. They said it wasn't true, but I don't believe that.
Well, that seems significant.
Yes, but I don't believe that at all because they're trying to cover their back.
You don't believe the internal investigation?
No, because there were multiple parents. When the Daily Caller originally did the interview with Jamie Reed, there were multiple parents that said basically their kids weren't looked after. Once they left the clinic, there were no checks and balances, and there were parents confirming that.
So I'm editing right now and just wanted to jump in here and sort of point out how strange this issue is that he's taking with the gender clinics. He says there's no follow-up with the trans patients. And I find that a bit odd because as someone who's been on testosterone for 10 years, I can tell you it is absolutely an ongoing effort, an ongoing process to continue to be prescribed hormones. Every 3 months for the last 10 years that I've been on T, I've had to go and have an in-person checkup as well as get blood work done in order for my doctor to continue to prescribe me T. And that is legally required. I have had to do that no matter which doctor I'm seeing. And they always ask me if I'm having any problems or if there's any concerns with the testosterone. So I'm not sure what more he's suggesting needs to be done here. Like, is he saying trans patients should have to continue to go to therapy, or like a driver's license situation, get their trans license renewed every couple years? I don't know, but I can tell you that it's not just one appointment and you're done forever. It takes consistent, active effort to maintain a hormone prescription.
So the internal investigation said there was no wrongdoings. The patient said there was no wrongdoings. So I guess I'm just curious, the people who are claiming that there was something wrong there is like the Daily Caller, Tucker Carlson. Are you saying that they don't have a bias?
Well, I mean, a lot of people have a bias and stuff, but, you know, we have to look at these gender clinics as a whole. Project Veritas exposed multiple clinics the other day, and a lot of these clinics are trying to cover their backs by trying to paint a rosy picture that it's perfect,
Did you
it's
say
fine.
Project Veritas?
Yes, they did an undercover investigation.
That's the guy who got ousted for being like a sex criminal and like scam artist, James O'Keefe. That's his organization, right?
He's not part of that organization now. So the organization that he left, Project Veritas, the original organization, did this investigation.
They don't have a lot of credibility, Veritas. It seems like every investigation they do is just chock full holes of untruths and just blatant lies. I don't think it's a very credible institution for pulling data from.
Well, there's multiple organizations like Project Veritas that do expose
Which other ones?
So Gays Against Groomism, ambassador for them, they are
Gays
also
Against
exposing
Groomers.
this happening in clinics.
Gays Against Groomers. So who's...
Have you heard of them?
I haven't, but who's the groomer then?
This organization is calling out the harms. They're doing investigations of gender clinics, calling out the harms of doing this to kids. Because look,
where's the grooming come in, though? That's the part that I find like really inflammatory. Because grooming implies that trans people or trans activists, and it's what you said here in this tweet, that they're pedophiles, that they're sexualizing kids. So where's that evidence come from? Because it's one thing to say we're against gender affirming care for minors, but it's a whole different thing to say, you know, they're grooming.
Well, that word is basically used because we're seeing many drag shows, like adult drag shows, where kids are attending, and it's very sexually explicit. So that is a form of grooming. We also see these.
That word is used because of drag shows. Okay, so you're going after gender clinics. It just, none of it makes sense. I think Ethan is doing a wonderful job at addressing and trying to get in there on some of this stuff. I'm honestly very impressed. And I'm also, I don't know if impressed is the word. I guess it is. I'm impressed that this is Oli London. Like, even though pretty much everything he's saying is bullshit, he's doing it well. I guess that's what it takes to be a successful grifter, but I'm still very surprised.
Kids' books in public libraries and in schools where they're teaching kids about drag and being trans. You know, that's not a subject a kid should hear. So that is a form of grooming because it's indoctrinating kids.
So go back to your claim about grooming. So you brought up the drag show for kids. Is there any other examples, or are we just talking about drag shows? Because I have to assume that the drag shows, even if it's as widespread as Project Veritas claims, which heaven knows how credible they are, there's got to be other examples to make such bold claims as that there's a whole movement trying to sexualize kids.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at the music industry, you have really shocking performances like Sam Smith, for instance, who is pushing a specific agenda. He has concerts which are allowing all ages. And, you know, if you want to be a musician, do whatever you want, but don't be doing sexually graphic things. He's doing imitating blowjobs. He has, you know, fetish gear on, and there's kids in the audience. So it's not just about drag queens. It's about protecting kids in general. So even if it's Cardi B, you know, I don't think kids should be at a Cardi B concert if she's twerking or doing like something very, very sexual. I think it's just.
But you're not doing anything about that. And also, these are the same ones that say, oh, look, it's cute. Look at these, you know, taking their little kids to fucking Hooters. A little family outing where the waitresses are far more scantily clad than you would see at a drag show, at an all ages drag show. I mean, there's really no consistency with their logic. It's all just cherry picking and finding whatever way they can frame queer people to back up their arguments. That's why they all have like the same 4 talking points, because there's no substance, there's nothing there actually going on to be upset and to attack and to defend children against.
You know, you turn on the TV, I mean, you see stuff worse than that, right? On YouTube and stuff. To say they're grooming them seems pretty disingenuous and actually really homophobic and transphobic to put this label that they're groomers, because you understand the gravity of such a claim, right?
Well, it's a very loaded word. I get that, but it's not an attack on the LGBT community at all. It's about basically calling out specific cases. It's not an attack on trans people.
Actually, since you bring it up, I have seen something troubling from a trans person that I thought was kind of gross. They were selling, it was like a kid's t-shirt with a trans person on it, and then they had like kids' toys with trans people on it, and it was kind of gross and groomy. Have you seen anything like that before?
You know, I've seen T-shirts that the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota wore, protect trans kids, with a knife on it. You know, things like that. I've seen T-shirts that says protect trans rights with AK-47s on it and stuff. And, you know, I don't think that's helpful messaging.
So actually, you know what's interesting, Oli? If you go to your website right now, your merch website, I was actually talking about your merch. You are actually selling kids' lunchboxes with a picture of you depicted as a trans woman. And you're selling
No, that's not as a trans woman. That's not as a trans woman. That's just a K-pop picture of me.
I had a feeling you would say that, because here it is, you wearing that design, and it's pretty obvious to tell that this is depicting you. This is from just like a month ago. And this is when you were trans.
Wearing my merch.
Yeah. So do you think it's appropriate to sell this to kids?
Well, it's a lunchbox with a picture of a K-pop cartoon. There's
Well, it's you as a
inappropriate with
trans.
that.
It's you as a trans woman.
It's me as a K-pop star. It's nothing to do with being trans or not. That's just a cartoon of me as a K-pop star. So it's not.
But
that's not inappropriate.
Right, but at the time you were a trans woman.
Let's
Correct.
fucking go.
At the time I was a trans woman, but there's nothing inappropriate.
So it's you
with
as
that.
a trans woman.
That I was a trans woman at the time. That picture does not depict me as a trans woman. It depicts me as a K-pop star. But
I find that interesting that you're willing to make that separation when you're making such general claims about groomers and stuff, because to me, by your own definition, this is pretty groomy. And even if you go, and this is all
an innocent picture.
Well, hold on, Ollie, hold on one
picture.
sec. Even if you go on your website right now, you're selling the same graphic, Oli London, Oli Merch Squad, as you depicted as a trans woman. And if you look at the available sizes, it's just kids. 3 to 4. Do you think it's appropriate for a 3 to 4-year-old to buy this shirt?
Yeah, of course. Any K-pop fan, if they want to buy my merch, they're absolutely entitled to. There's nothing inappropriate with that merch at all. It's
that is a trans woman, Ollie. You're not understanding your own logic.
You're clutching at straws.
How am
That's
I? You were okay. Hold on. Let's follow this through. You were a trans woman when you made this.
Holy shit!
There's a picture of you wearing it. It's obviously you as a trans woman. Here's you as a trans woman, and here's you as a trans woman on the shirt, on a kid's shirt. How am I clutching at straws?
Well, you're clutching at straws. It's an innocent cartoon. It doesn't say anything about indoctrinating
The tongue
children.
is somewhat sexual. How the tongue is out like that, it's a little disturbing.
The tongue is disturbing. This is so good. I was not aware of this. I mean, I can't believe that he's selling this as merch while making all these claims that, you know, anything marketed at children that has anything to do with being trans is promoting an ideology. And just so we're clear, it's obvious that Ethan doesn't have a problem with this. He's pointing out the inconsistency and the hypocrisy here. And it is just so good. My God, this is what I signed up here for today.
Let's at least be consistent. If we're going to accuse people of grooming kids, you know, and which you have made a short-lived but somewhat profitable career of doing, then I think we need to, we need to get on top of this. I just don't think it's appropriate to be selling lunch boxes with a trans woman on it.
Ethan, if that lunchbox had something inappropriate or sexual, that would be wrong. But this is an innocent cartoon of me doing a K-pop pose. There's nothing wrong with that particular picture.
Let's say a kid's at a drag queen show. That's grooming. and let's say they are selling lunch boxes to the kids of with a picture of a drag queen on it, doing a cute pose or whatever, right? Not sexual, but they're in drag. Do you think it's appropriate for a kid to carry that lunchbox?
Well, I think it's appropriate if the kid's at a drag show that's inappropriate, because some drag shows are generally not inappropriate, but
Okay,
a lot
so
of them are becoming
okay, that's
sexualized.
interesting. So some drag shows are appropriate and some aren't.
Correct. It's about, if you're going to do anything in front of kids, it should be PC. It should not have anything sexual. But sadly, a lot of these shows are doing sexual things, so kids should not be there.
Okay, this is interesting. So you're saying it is okay for kids to go to drag shows?
I'm not saying that at all. I don't think they should in general, but I'm just saying
if they're not sexual, and I would assume it's not because it's for kids, right? I mean, if they're doing sexual stuff, I would consider that. Obviously, everyone would consider that inappropriate. But I believe you've just said drag shows are safe for kids. In fact, you would even be okay. Well, hold on. You even said you'd be okay with them carrying a drag show lunchbox.
No, look, I just don't think kids should be anywhere that is putting ideas into their heads. If a show is innocent, that's obviously better than it being a sexual show. But
anywhere that's putting ideas in their heads, church, school, just to name a few. This is good. It's living up to the title.
I still don't think kids should be exposed to gender ideology.
But what about this lunchbox you're selling to kids? I'm just afraid that some of your some of the people that you associate with might consider this grooming by your own standard. I'm just looking out for you and your reputation. What do you make of this picture? Are these kids in danger? Your thoughts?
Well, I haven't seen the video of that particular show. And it depends what book they're reading. If the drag queen is teaching them about gender ideology. It appears to be
depicting some fish.
Rainbow fish.
A couple of fish in the ocean. It seems like...
That's the rainbow fish.
The rainbow fish. It seems to be the rainbow fish, Oli.
Well, I think a lot of these books are pushing even subtle messages on gender ideology, trying to tell kids you should be trans and become LGBT, and kids should make that decision on their own. So if that book is teaching them about, transitioning or becoming a drag queen, that's inappropriate.
We, when I was in school, when I was a kid, we did have rainbow fish in the classroom. I think my second or third grade teacher did read it to us. And I mean, I did go on to later transition. Who knows? I'm surprised he doesn't know rainbow fish. It's a classic. Maybe that's what's missing from his life this whole time. Maybe that's his problem. He needs to read rainbow fish with a drag queen.
Does that book contain subtle messaging that's trying to tell kids to change their gender when they shouldn't be thinking about things like that? And, in Florida, they've obviously banned books in the classroom that teach gender ideology. And there's a lot of books, kids' books. There's a book called The Gay ABCs, and that pushes gender ideology. For 2-year-olds, it's 2+. And I don't think that's appropriate for a kid that just should be reading kids' books that are completely innocent. They shouldn't even be...
But what do you make of this? What do you make of this lunchbox, though?
I personally think if a 2-year-old is able to read, they should be able to read whatever books they want.
Why do you keep going back to the lunchbox?
Well, because, it's got a picture of a trans woman on a kid's lunchbox.
Got a picture of a K-pop star on the lunchbox.
Who's the K-pop star? Who is the K-pop?
Come on, Ethan,
it's you, right?
It's me.
It's you. And this K-pop star is a trans woman, right?
Would you buy it for your kids?
I mean, I wouldn't just because I don't want to support you financially. But but theoretically, I don't think I'd have a problem with... No, I wouldn't have a problem with my children looking up to a trans person. Of course not. What would be wrong with that?
No, and Ethan, look, I don't have a problem with trans people at all. I'm just saying that certain things, when it comes to gender ideology, if transgenderism is being pushed on young kids in preschool or even elementary school when they shouldn't be thinking about that, I think it's wrong to expose them to that. I think
exposing them to
kids
trans
discover
people.
Who they are.
Exposing them to trans people, like this lunchbox is. Right?
You're really obsessed with that lunchbox.
Well, but I think it's a really important point that you're not, coming to terms with. We're exposing kids to a trans woman. Don't you think that's wrong? Why is it still on your website, at least,
It's come on, Ethan. I don't know what to say. It's a cartoon of a K-pop star, and it's very...
I mean, I'm glad that Ethan's not letting him dodge this one. Earlier, Oli dodged one of Ethan's questions about whether 17-year-olds should ever have access to gender-affirming care. And I kind of wish that he would have gotten an answer on that. So I'm really glad that he's sticking with this and not just letting him wiggle out of this one.
If I was doing something inappropriate, if I had, protect trans kids on there, that would have a message. That would have a loaded gender ideology message. But it literally says Oli Squad with a cartoon of me doing the peace sign. It's like super cute, super innocent. Just like most K-pop stars are like super cute, you know?
I do think it's a little unhinged that he keeps referring to himself as a K-pop star. And it's a bit ridiculous to say that you support trans people and that you completely are behind trans adults, but you think that protecting trans kids is supporting a harmful ideology. Where do you think trans adults come from? Every single trans adult was once a trans kid who I can almost guarantee you would have rather been given the opportunity to have the correct childhood and live as the gender that they were always meant to be, rather than going through the pain of the wrong puberty, the wrong adolescence, having to go to prom in a dress, you know, in some cases not being able to date when all their peers were dating, and just overall having to repress their entire identity until they reach adulthood. That is not something that you wish on someone who you wholeheartedly support.
Aren't you making like the Ahigo face a little bit?
What, do you think I should make it more masculine?
No, the Ahigo face is like some kind of hentai thing, isn't it?
I have no idea.
You don't know about the Ahigo face?
No.
I don't
is
believe
this?
you. Come on.
No, I watch anime, like I watch Attack of the Titans
That's
and stuff,
straight
but I'm
cap,
not
my
familiar
brother. Here's the Ahigo face.
Go on.
It's like a hentai reference. But
Okay.
but you see the resemblance, right?
Can you put them side by side?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to.
I mean, that's quite a cute drawing.
Right, but that's like a woman like orgasming is what that is.
Well,
Or like
Well, that's not
lustful.
romantic.
It's like a lustful kind of sexual gratification.
Ethan, you're
face.
really clutching at straws.
Am
I'm
I?
literally like, I've got my eyes open, I'm doing the peace sign, and
What
you're
is-
trying to dissect it and say this, honestly. But this is literally an innocent cartoon. I've got my eyes open, I'm doing the peace sign. You could not get innocent. What do I need to do, Ethan, like to please people? Do I have to like close my eyes?
Well, I personally don't necessarily have a problem. What is your fascination?
In my experience, that's the opposite of closing your eyes. I don't know what this is turning into. I don't know what of this is going to make it into my final video, but I am thoroughly entertained.
Fascination with the eye wideness. I haven't said anything about that.
No, I'm just saying that, look, in the picture, my eyes, it's not even me, by the way, it's a cartoon, but the eyes are very wide open,
Right.
like
Of
glistening.
you.
I'm just saying, like, what's wrong with having my eyes open? Like, we're human beings. We have to have
I
our
don't
eyes
know
open.
why you're
Like, would
talking
it be
about
better
eyes
if I close
open.
my eyes?
I don't know what that means, Ollie. Here's a reference to popular culture with the Ahigo face. It's, like kind of an e-girl thing. You're probably aware of that.
Well, I'm not an e-girl, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, but you're on the internet, and it's from anime, which you seem to be. Okay, but let's move
No,
on.
I do know anime and stuff. I don't know anything to do with that pose. Literally, I've got my mouth open like this. Peace. I always have my mouth open, like.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Come on.
Let me see that again. Looks really natural when you do it.
Thanks.
Yes, girl. So but you identify as a male now. You're not trans. We're over that.
No, I'm basically I got to a point where I was going to probably die from all the surgery I was doing. And, I was really mentally struggling. Had a lot of mental health struggles based on from when I was being bullied very severely as a kid. I just used to have all those things that left me with traumas. So it kind of messed up my head. And as an adult, I didn't deal with that in the way that I should have. I should have had therapy. I should have spoke to someone. Instead, it was almost like self-harming. So all this crazy surgery was me kind of lashing out at the bullies, and it was very, very destructive for me and for other people. So I'm glad to be over that.
Do you think that people who are bullied are at a higher chance of becoming trans?
Yes, definitely. So I talk about this in my book. There's a lot of studies. There was a study in Finland by the top transgender clinic that was basically transitioning a lot of kids, and they said around 45% of the kids had experienced severe bullying, so that led to their gender dysphoria identity. But there's also the other side.
Your theory is that the bullying leads to the dysphoria, not the dysphoria leading to the bullying, which would be more logical.
I was just about to say as well, but there is also the flip side of that, where the kids are being bullied because of their identity, because maybe a boy is more feminine or a girl is more like a tomboy. So they're also being bullied for that. But in certain studies, the one in Finland at Tampere University, they found that there was a significant correlation between a kid being bullied and then the onset of their gender dysphoria coming afterwards rather than before. But, of course it works both ways.
Here it is. Let's read the conclusion. Here. There's the abstract and everything. Let's see. The conclusion says gender identity, especially non-binary identity, is associated with both being bullied and perpetrating bullying, even when a range of variables, including internal stress and involvement in bullying and the opposite role, are taken into account. This suggests that bullying during adolescence may serve as a mechanism of maintaining heteronormality, which I think what that means is that the bullying actually results in people rejecting their transness in favor of heteronormality. So it seems to be saying the opposite, actually, of what you've claimed it said. Do you see what I'm referring to? Heteronormality?
Yeah, no, I see that. I see that article. That, if you actually read the full study, which
That's
I've read
the
the full
conclusion.
study, you can find it on the National Institute of Health.
Oh no, this is the study. Yeah, no, this is the study. It's the .gov.
Finland. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. And then this is the author's conclusion right there. I mean, according to this, bullying prevents more kids from transitioning. Do you believe that we need more bullying?
No, I'm an advocate against bullying. I think whoever gets bullied, it's so wrong. I've been bullied myself, and I'm an advocate.
But if
for trying to
bullying
stop
results
that.
in less transitioning, then that, according to what you're saying, is the best outcome for these kids.
No, I don't agree at all. No kid, even if a kid is feminine or a girl is a tomboy, they should not get bullied. No one should get bullied. They should be provided with support. But if somebody wants to transition, I'm not against people transitioning. I just don't think it's right as a kid, because a lot of these kids are going through so many issues during that time. They are not in the right frame of mind to make an informed consent decision.
If a child is suicidal, do you believe that they should transition?
So there's a lot of clinics and doctors that use this argument. There's a clinic called Kaiser Permanente in California.
Kaiser Permanente.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. So basically they have used with multiple people that have since detransitioned. They basically told them your kids are going to commit suicide if you don't transition them. But what they said afterwards is they actually felt worse 6 months down the line after their transition, because they've got hormones in their body, they've got puberty blockers, and they even had double mastectomy.
That the vast majority of people that transition don't regret it. 99%. Are you aware of that stat?
You don't hear the cases of the detransitions.
Are you aware, Oli, that 99% of kids that transition do not regret it?
No, I don't support that statistic. I think it's wrong because these clinics...
From what authority do you disprove that statistic?
Well, look, these clinics make these studies. They don't even do follow-up studies. There's an example of a
Do you not trust studies? Because you just told me to read one.
Look, what I'm saying is the gender clinics make billions of dollars every year. Their studies are skewed and biased.
In a review of 27 studies involving almost 8,000 teens and adults who had transgender surgeries, mostly in Europe, US, and Canada, 1% on average expressed regret. For some, regret was temporary, but a small number went on to detransition. But that's 1%. That seems like a very small amount to be...
1%. I've unfortunately had to have similar conversations with this, so I know that the average rate of misdiagnosis just in regular outpatient medicine is 20%. There's a 20% rate of misdiagnosis for non-trans issues. But we don't criminalize those doctors or ban those procedures. But it's very interesting that Oli says you don't hear from the detransitioners, because I feel like those voices are lifted up quite a bit. You don't hear from the average detransitioner. You hear from a handful, like 3 or 4, of hand-picked detransitioners who have been taken in by TERFs and had their stories told very openly, very loudly to a very large audience in a way that is the most inflammatory possible in order to spark outrage against trans medical care. But the actual numbers, the actual science and the studies are overwhelmingly supportive of trans healthcare. And I love that Ethan said, do you not like studies? Because you just had me read one.
And this is 27 studies, so this is a massive kind of conclusion, right? A scientific conclusion, a consensus, if you would.
I don't trust studies.
Why?
Even if you're saying it's
27 studies. Then why did you tell me to read this one, Oli? You use studies when it's convenient for you, but you don't when it goes against your thesis. I don't understand your consistency with studies. Do we like them or no?
What I'm trying to say, Ethan, is the gender clinics are very, very powerful.
Do we?
They
No.
control
Ollie,
a
do
lot of
we
studies.
like studies or not? All studies or no
I like
studies?
studies.
Oh, we do.
I like studies.
You do
but
like
you have
studies.
to. But you have to always look at bias. The clinic in Finland was a transgender clinic that made the study. So they had different findings to many of the clinics in America that are saying there's a low detransition rate. But there are thousands of detransitioners out there. They're just not sharing their stories because of fear of being attacked. And, they get abuse every single day from trans activists. So there's thousands of kids out there.
I am so sick of this lie that is being told and perpetuated by TERFs. I know a lot of trans people. I know a lot more trans people than the average person does. I have never met a single trans person who has ever expressed that they just don't like detransitioners. Like the trans people versus detransitioners story that is being told is coming completely from transphobes. Trans people aren't attacking anyone for detransitioning. In the unfortunate circumstance where a detransitioner is sought out by TERFs who offer them support by convincing them that they were manipulated and coerced into being trans, and they then use their stories to try to promote anti-trans legislation and attack our rights, then yes, we will call that out. We will speak out against that and tell the truth of the situation. But literally no trans person gives a fucking shit if someone detransitions. Why would that bother me? It doesn't.
You seem to be in denial, Ollie, that the vast, vast majority of these people, let's say there's a bias. Let's say instead of 1%, it's 10% regret it. And that's a huge deviation. So I'm giving you a lot of doubt here. If 10% only regret it, do you think that on whole, of the 90% who don't regret it and who had what they consider life-changing health care, why would you seek to deny them life-changing health care? When they,
Well, Ethan,
they say, this saved my life.
Well, Ethan, children can't get tattoos. Children can't buy cigarettes or buy alcohol. So how on earth can they consent to doing something they don't even understand about?
Actually, you can get a tattoo under 18 with your parents' consent. You can join the military. You can put yourself in hundreds of thousands of debt for college. You can have a job. You can drive a car. You can have your own place. You can do a lot of adult things as a teenager as long as you have your parents' consent to do those things. And if we're talking about surgeries, then girls can get boob jobs under 18, which tend to have a way higher rate of complications than top surgery. Hell, children can get married. We had a Republican senator going about because he wanted to maintain the fact that 12-year-olds should be allowed to get married. So if you want to talk about groomers, I mean, that pretty cut and dry.
We have to look at many of these kids. They don't understand. They don't think about the future. Like if a kid changes their body, they have gender reassignment surgery or take hormones, they might not be able to have a baby when they're older. They don't think about those things because they're kids. So the issue is just we shouldn't be doing this to kids.
Do you know how many kids between the age of 6 and 17 went through irreversible surgery in the United States?
I know the number rises every year. Now it will be several thousand.
So the number of patients, of children between 6 and 17 who went through irreversible surgery in the United States, what was the years on that one?
3 years, 2019 through 2021.
So this is the most comprehensive data we have, and this comes straight from the government stats. It was 250 per year. Does that seem significant to you?
I would be curious to look into this and see what kind of surgeries they are considering for this, because there's a lot of gender affirming care that isn't top surgery or bottom surgery exclusively. And I've also never heard of any case of someone as young as 6 years old having a gender affirming surgery.
That's completely incorrect because there's a clinic in Oregon. It's in the thousands now.
The thousands? Is that significant? 1,000? I mean, we have 50 million children in the United States. Do you think 1,000 is statistically significant?
It's significant even because it's growing every day. If you look at any chart or graph of kids being medically transitioned, it's now in the tens of thousands across the US.
History of left-handedness. I hope he pulls out the history of left-handedness chart.
One would assume, right, Oli, as people become more educated and aware of transgenderism, and we've seen the same thing with homosexuality, which, of course, you are a member of the LGBT community. You know, in the 50s, as being gay became more acceptable, you saw the numbers significantly rising during that time. I'm sure you know that, right?
Yeah, of course,
So
because
what's
it
the
became more
difference?
acceptable.
What is the difference between the hysteria that took place then about there was, on the right that they're turning our kids gay? That turned out not to be true. You agree?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely, absolutely
good. So hold
correct.
on to that. So now today we see the same graph going up of trans kids getting surgery or gender affirming care or whatever. So why is it that you today can draw a conclusion that was the same conclusion in the 50s that you disagree with, that trans kids are being influenced societal to become trans? It seems to be a glaring contradiction in logic.
It's not just random based on the fact that it's easier for people to come out these days or identify in different ways. It is a concerted push, Ethan. So there's now
That's what they
over
said about gay
60
people.
Ethan, there's now over 60 pediatric gender clinics that have opened within the last 15 years across the US. They weren't there before, so they are profiting from this. They're opening clinics because they know they can profit. So when they push, through popular culture or push transitioning via TikTok trends, they are profiting from that. So it benefits them if society and children are being confused and indoctrinated in schools or via social media.
All right, so I'm editing the video right now, and I just had to jump in here because I didn't acknowledge this when I was watching it. I just sort of giggled through this part, but I really want to point out how absolutely batshit this conspiracy theory is that Oli London is proposing. Dude is saying that there are 60 gender clinics across the entire US that have come together and form some shadowy, devious council that is creating TikTok trends to convince children to become trans. Absolutely baffling.
They said that gay kids were being influenced to be gay. You disagree with that now, and you're one of the people that says kids are being influenced to become trans, and it's the same curve. Why is that curve not just the result of it becoming more acceptable in society? It's the same curve, right? Same curve.
What I'm trying to tell you is that there are influences now that didn't exist 10 years
Like
ago
what?
that are pushing kids. For instance, TikTok, there's about 2.2.
So TikTok is turning people trans, where back in the 50s, people said it was like rock and roll music, it was movies, it was hippie movements. That wasn't accessible to the generation before them. I don't see the difference.
Well, I don't agree with that. They didn't have phones
No?
back then. Kids are now being pushed trends, and the AI algorithm recognizes a kid's vulnerabilities,
Well,
and they push videos.
music, rock and roll was something that was new back then.
No, correct. And you could also argue that in the 80s, more people came out because, music like George Michael was, and songs about freedom and stuff and coming out.
So then why are you concluding that TikTok is making people trans? I don't understand the logic. You just contradicted yourself.
No. What I'm saying is in the last 5 years, there is an increase in gender clinics opening because they are exploiting these children that are being pushed trends. There's a lot of lobby groups, Ethan. The Human Rights Campaign is a massive lobby group. They're going around.
Ollie, you were trans before TikTok.
I've struggled with gender dysphoria for all of my life.
Before TikTok.
Correct. But my identity struggles came about because I was using social media too much. And
But
I
Ollie,
started
you
to
were
see...
born in 1990. You're not that much younger than me. When I grew up, there was no social media. I don't believe you probably had social media until you were in your 20s, well into your 20s.
Yeah, correct. And the reason I struggled with my identity was because of bullying in childhood. But then I only transitioned as an adult.
But bullying in childhood, we established from the report that you told me to read that bullying in childhood results in less people transitioning.
Sorry, say it again.
The study you sent me about bullying, the conclusion was that bullying results in less people transitioning. So you says it's a result of social media. Well, you didn't have social media. Then you says it was a result of bullying. But this study you told me to read says bullying reduces the amount of people who transition.
This is exhausting. Ethan's doing a great job at shutting down what Ollie's saying, using his own points against him. I'm pretty surprised that it's maintained like a very civil atmosphere. It hasn't gotten combative or very emotional. But yeah, I'm really happy that Ethan is bringing out the receipts and calling this stuff out. It's a lot better than I expected.
So how is it that you were trans before, outside of all of these influences that are turning people trans?
Well, firstly, I'm an individual, so I'm one person. So my experience is not reflective of every single person that becomes trans out there. The reason I became trans was, you follow my journey, the Korean stuff. That was me trying to find myself and trying to, fit in because I hated the way I
Ollie,
looked.
if
And
your
then
journey is a personal one, which I totally understand, then what gives you the right to project your personal experience onto others?
well, I speak to detransitioners every day. I speak to parents. I speak to women,
So
and
don't
they
you
are very.
that assumes a bias, Ollie. You're talking all day to detransitioners. We've also established, because we, I think, like studies, or I don't know if we decided, I think you said you like studies, because 27 of them made a consensus that 99% of people that transition don't regret it. So if you spend all day talking to the 1% that do regret it, don't you believe that underlies a bias?
Well, no, I don't believe it because I
Really?
talk to all sorts of people. I talk to parents that have trans kids, and they're trying to navigate through that. And the general consensus with everyone
I
I
feel
speak
for
to,
those
because
kids.
we shouldn't be doing this to kids, and there generally is a concerted.
Dude's entire platform is dedicated to shitting on trans people. I feel bad for the children of the parents that he's talking to. And I think Ethan did a good job in pointing out the bias there, that if you're only talking to 1%, of course there's going to be a bias there.
I talk with parents, I talk with all these detransition. It's when this happens to kids. That's the issue I'm speaking about.
Right,
It's
but that's
not
so
about
rare.
people being trans.
Let me ask you another question, just to pivot a little bit. I'm one of the people that would say Oli London is willing to do anything for attention. You have probably some kind of, I don't want to diagnose you, I'm not a psychiatrist, but there is some craving for attention, clearly, right? Good or bad. You said your pronouns were core Ian, you said you were going to get your penis size reduced so that you could look more, you could be a more authentic Korean. I mean, these are not serious things. You seem to be a provocateur. Is it possible that you are participating in this right-wing grift because, one, it's making you a lot of money, and two, it's getting you a lot of attention? Is that possible, that you actually don't care and that your beliefs are empty? Is that
No,
possible?
absolutely not. So when I struggled with my identity for years, I generally was struggling, and I was lashing out at bullies. And the more I would get bullied online by YouTubers and people on TikTok, the more I would act crazy because I was trying to feel validated and loved. And it was very
Well,
unhealthy.
the
Ethan, I'm not
conservative
hiding that.
movement has offered you quite an open hand. They're very glad to be using you as a mouthpiece against trans people. So it must feel good to be being accepted from somebody, even if it is at the detriment of many people who are at risk, trans people. It must feel nice
No,
to have people supporting you.
No, it's nothing to do with that at all. I could have easily continued doing K-pop. I could have focused on TikTok, which in actual fact, when I detransitioned, I lost so many brand deals. I lost all my invites to New York Fashion Week. I was front row every
Yeah, but
season.
now you're
I
on
lost all
Tucker
my invites.
Carlson. I mean, that's the biggest show in the world, or it was. Rest in peace to the GOAT.
Yeah, he was the original GOAT. But no, it's nothing to do with that.
So you say it's not possible that you are just doing this for attention. If we go back, here's a recording of you saying that you're using the BLM movement for attention and for cameos. Here, listen.
Millions. So it's basically every time I do a music video, it's like, if it's 1 million, it's £1,000. So if I just keep releasing music videos, that's like enough. And then also because I've been a lot on Twitter, there's been so many people talking about me on Twitter because I'm supporting the Black Lives Matter and protests and stuff. So I had 200,000 views on the video. So because of that as well, I'm getting a lot of requests. So it's just, I'm just staying relevant in the news, on TV and stuff, because the more exposure I have, if I'm trending on Twitter or whatever on TV, then the more cameos I get. So yeah,
So here you say you're supporting BLM to stay relevant and because it gets you more cameos. Have you been getting more cameos since you went right wing?
Well, first.
Holy shit. This is actually insane. I was not expecting so much of this. But I mean, boom, there you have it. We've known it's a grift. Good on Ethan for calling it out so blatantly, and his team for finding the receipts and showing them to Oli and putting him on the spot to explain this stuff. I mean, that's pretty damning. Saying that you were supporting the Black Lives Matter movement to stay relevant. There's really nothing you can say there to get out of that one. I also just have to point this out because it's distracting me how much I'm thinking about this. He looks like he's on a casting couch. Is this his home? It looks like some low-budget pornography set decoration there with the single vase skewed with the little plants and the one very hotel-esque deer art with tree antlers. I feel like I'm watching a cam girl or like a hostage video. I don't know. It's weirded me out a bit.
It's my voice, but it was edited deceptively to try
What
and make
about it?
me look bad.
So what's the deception?
So I'm not doing any of this. What I'm doing now is to try and help people. Previously, Ethan, I'll admit
What's
it.
the
Previously, I had
deception,
some very
Ollie? You tell me
unhealthy
it's
behavior.
deceptive. I'm open to hearing you out. How is it deceptive?
I'm explaining. So,
Okay.
previously I had unhealthy behavior where I was generally like thinking, oh, how many likes can I get? How many views can I get? Because I was in a really crazy mental health place. And, the more surgery I would get, I would feel worse about myself. So I would try and be validated via online views and things. But in fact,
Unlike
talking
now.
to BLM, actually, no, I'm not doing it now. If I
Right.
wanted to, Ethan,
Which is
if
why
I
you're on
wanted
the
to,
show.
no, if I
That's why
wanted
you're on
to get
Tucker.
attention and stuff,
Yeah.
I would stick to doing TikToks. I would stick to doing my K-pop music
You're
videos.
getting a lot more attention right now. I mean, you're getting a lot of attention right now. In fact, you wrote a whole damn book about it, Gender Madness.
Well, what I'm doing now is because I've actually come to a realization that I have had some very unhealthy behaviors in the past, and I'm trying to remedy that. Because I can't sleep at night when I think, have I done something bad? Have I been a bad influence? So I'm actually trying to remedy that and devote my
I hate
time
to tell you, if
activism.
that's what you're concerned about, you're going to feel really bad when your next phase comes around and you realize that
It's
you
not
were
a
the
phase, Ethan.
the mouthpiece for really hateful people.
Ethan, it's not a phase, and I'm not a mouthpiece for anyone. I'm literally just trying to speak up about issues that I have finally woken up to see what's going on in the
It
world.
seems
and I'm
to
actually
me,
thinking,
Ollie, that if we look at all of your different iterations of your personality, the one consistent thing is a need for attention.
you could say that about Trisha Paytas, who was your best friend and you used to do a podcast.
Oh, I do say
with.
that. I mean,
She
yeah, I would
had-
say that about Trisha Paytas. Sure. Are you like
she had
Trisha
different
Paytas?
identities, but she had a wake up call, and then she realized that she could be an influence to others, and she's really a positive girl. She's doing amazing things at the moment, and I had a wake up
Trisha
call
was
as well
a chicken
because I was,
nugget, I believe. Do you empathize with that, Ollie, as a former trans person?
Ethan, I'm vegetarian, so I wouldn't empathize with her being
So you're saying you're
nugget.
like yeah, and congratulations on that. We support that. Ollie, do you believe you're like Trisha Paytas?
No, not at all. I'm not comparing myself
okay.
to her. I'm just saying that she had a lot of identity struggles. She had some unhealthy behaviors. I had some unhealthy behaviors. I struggled, but I'm remedying that now. I'm working hard every
Like
day
Trisha.
to try and be a better person, to try and help people. And that's what I'm focused on. So people can
Good.
call me what they want. I'm not a mouthpiece for anyone. I'm literally trying to help
Okay,
make
let's
the world
pivot.
a better place.
Let's pivot. This came about when you found God, right? You and you can fill in the blanks here. You were confused. You were a transgender woman. You were selling kids' lunch boxes depicting a trans woman on it. That's pretty low by your own definition. And then you were walking around and you found God. You entered a church and then you realized, hey, this is a cool vibe, maybe.
Well, no, actually, before that, I was started to go to therapy. So basically, they actually told me, you need to speak about this. You need to find a community that's accepting, non-judgmental, and kind.
So hold on. Your therapist told you that you're not trans?
No, my therapist didn't tell me I wasn't trans, but they said if I'm having issues and struggling with who I am, perhaps I should find a community that's very welcoming and might make me feel like I can belong. Take some time off social media.
I want to show you this clip from an interview from Piers Morgan, okay?
Lots of pictures here of you as a
Yes,
woman. So how long ago was that? Was that quite recently?
That was actually at London Fashion Week, so that was literally a month ago, so kind of a drastic change.
So you went from trans woman at Fashion Week, a month later to being on Piers Morgan denouncing the trans movement. When you said take your time and talk and figure out who you are, that all happened within a month.
No, actually, since I originally transitioned, I felt great for a couple of months. And then I really started to question it. I started to think, okay, I can even do more surgery to make myself physically become a transgender woman, or I can take a step back. So I was having a lot of thoughts of regret, but it was too late at that point. I'd already done facial feminization. I'd already changed myself. I was very confused. So I'd been having those thoughts for a number of months. And then within a month from the,
I think that, gosh, there's just so much. I have so many thoughts. I think that the right they've found a pretty good person to represent them. I think this is someone who is sufficiently all fucked up, has a lot of bizarre behaviors they can point to, a lot of erratic identity changing. Oh, hi. Hello. We're cat sitting for my mom, so Charlie's going to join us for a bit here, it seems. I think Ethan is really on the right track with Ollie having this extreme need for validation and attention. He's clearly not an idiot. He's just willing to throw his morals and his own identity and just everything aside for the attention and for the money. It is definitely a bizarre behavior. I think that with him being so much more like well-spoken and self-aware than I was expecting, it has just made it that much more clear that it's a grift. He's a con man. He's doing the same shit he's always done. But now he's got a group of people who are willing to really prop him up and elevate his voice because he is willing to make such a spectacle of himself.
So tell me about finding God. Tell me about when you were in the church and you had like an awakening.
Well, I lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of loved ones because they thought my behavior was very unhealthy. And, it was a now or never moment. I could have continued down a very destructive path, destructive for myself and people around me, and destructive for, people that see me online. I think I was, not a good role model, and I deeply regret that. So
were you trying to be a role model? I find that interesting.
No, well, at the time in my delusion, I thought I was a role model for people that liked K-pop and wanted to be a K-pop star. But, so then I started going to church to try and take some time out to think about my life and think, what is the next step for me? And then, after spending some time going to church sessions and sermons, it made me realize, just try to find acceptance with who I am and stop doing all this craziness and try to get back to the real me. And that's the most important thing.
I've heard you mention the real you being a British man. But if you talk to other people, I think they might say the real them. And as I think you would agree, people are born gay. They don't choose to be gay. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then why?
And I agree. And I believe that some people generally feel trans since they're born. I do believe that.
So God made them that way, right? So God would have made them that way.
I just believe that some people are born as trans, but my issue is kids being indoctrinated to transition when they didn't think about that before. So however you're born, that's the way you feel.
Okay, but of course kids aren't going to have an understanding of what it means to be trans before being exposed to the concept of being trans. Like, I, as a child, heavily identified with the term tomboy because I thought that meant trans man. I thought it meant, so I'm a girl, but I'm actually a boy. I'm a tomboy. I always called myself a tomboy, thinking that I was calling myself a trans boy. Learning new concepts is not indoctrination. And as I said earlier, all of the adults who are trans were once kids who were trans. We just didn't know how to express that at the time.
Because when you're on these shows, you kind of make a point about being like, I'm going back and I'm being true to myself, implying almost that like this trans thing is just some kind of silly psychosis you had. But you're saying now being born trans is actually a state that God creates people in. I'm
saying that some people are born trans, some people are born gay.
Does God make people trans?
I'm not saying anything on that subject.
Why?
I'm just saying that some people everybody feels different. Everybody feels different.
Wait, why are you not unwilling to say that God makes people trans?
I'm just saying that people are born in different ways. They feel different. Some people might be born intersex. Some people are born gay.
You talk about God going back to how God or Jesus intended me. So I feel like this is an interesting point to resolve because this is something that you bring up in your interviews. God makes people trans. I find that to be.
I never said God made people trans. I never said God didn't make people trans.
Does God make people gay? Does God make people gay?
I was born a man, and then as a teenager, I became gay. So it didn't happen from birth, but I struggled with I was very feminine. I struggled with my identity as a kid.
Was that your choice or God's choice?
There's a lot of influences that influence people in life.
God is all powerful, right?
No, perhaps I wouldn't have turned out the way I did if I wasn't bullied, or perhaps
is God all powerful?
Yeah, God is very powerful. Yes, absolutely.
All powerful.
But
is God all powerful?
God is all powerful, but there are.
So then He made you gay and trans people trans.
No, there are.
Why would God all powerful make someone so confused that they wanted to be trans? Well, actually, logically, it doesn't even make sense. If God is all powerful and He creates a being, and then this being lives through their lives and then says, "Oh, I want to transition," God made them that way. If God is all powerful, it's all part of His design. God wants people to be trans.
Well, there are societal, environmental.
God created society.
Yes, correct. But I'm just saying there are there's a lot of Ethan. There's a lot of human factors that influence
God created
people.
humans.
If people are, yes, I know that, but if people are exposed to gender ideology,
God
they
created
become
gender
susceptible to that.
ideology.
What I'm saying is a lot of these people would not have felt this way when they're born, but they're being pushed by society
God
and things
created
around them
society.
to think that they're going to transition.
I don't see any logical conclusion that doesn't come to the idea that God made people trans. He's all powerful, right? You said he's all powerful?
Yes, God is all powerful, but also humans have influences on other humans.
But he made humans.
But this isn't going anywhere.
It's not, is it? Okay, let's go on. Do you believe that the Bible is against?
That was kind of cute. They're both just kind of like, all right, let's move on. We're not getting anywhere with this.
Against transgenderism, or what's your thought on that as a I guess a newborn Christian?
Well, the Bible was written a long time ago, and there are things in the Bible, such as in the Old Testament, that aren't relevant to today's society. We know that. So we have to adapt what was written 2,000 years ago to the modern day. Transgenderism wasn't in the Bible because there weren't trans people visible back then. Of course, no. Look, I've even got this in my book. Even there was a Roman emperor that was trans. He used to dress as a woman. So we know there's instances, but I'm just saying in the Bible
society
itself,
influence him? Did society influence the emperor to be trans?
Well, I wasn't alive then.
Well,
but,
hold on. You wrote about it in your book. God dang, man.
Yes, but so there were some Roman scholars that were around at the time, and taken from their writings, he used to dress as a woman. He used to act like a woman, and his wife would have to call him ma'am. Now, I wasn't around back then, so I don't know the exact details, but he thought he was a woman. So, maybe he could have been born like that. Some people are born like that, and they generally think that they're in the wrong body. So
you don't have an opinion on if the Bible supports transgenderism or not, or homosexuality even.
No, the Bible was written a long time ago.
Yeah, then why? But surely, I mean, why use the Bible as a guide for anything in your life if it was written so long ago? I don't understand that point.
Because there's many teachings in the Bible that are very, very positive, about love and acceptance and kindness, and trying to help humanity.
Yeah, and those aren't the parts of the Bible that are being cited and weaponized against, like, queer people. I think it was very telling when Ethan asked him if God is all-powerful. That was a great move, because I know Christians very well. That is a direct dig. Like, that is something that immediately a Christian who is about their faith and all about God, they're going to say, yes, of course. An immediately snap reaction. They are not going to say anything to even entertain that there might be a question, that they might be questioning that. It's going to be absolutely. If you ask a Christian that is God all powerful? There will not be hesitation. And I mean, Oli was pretty hesitant. It took him a while to get there.
If we're talking about protecting kids, it all comes down to protecting kids, right? I mean, this is the thesis I've heard you explain. So as a Catholic, what do you think poses a greater threat? Drag shows or clergy members?
Well, actually, there's a lot of scandals and very bad things that have happened with the clergy. And, I'm against all forms of abuse. So there's a lot that the Catholic Church has done. And I will call that out as well as calling out drag shows that are sexualizing kids, because all forms of child abuse, whether it's in a church, whether it's in a religious organization, or whatever, is wrong.
If you had kids, would you feel more comfortable leaving them at a drag time, story time, or with a clergy member?
If I had kids, I would actually be with them all the time. I wouldn't leave them anywhere.
You would never leave them?
No, because, as a parent,
hypothetically, you don't have to do it. I'm just talking hypothetically. Would you feel more comfortable leaving them with a clergyman, a member of the Catholic Church, or at the the drag queen story time hour?
Again, neither. I wouldn't want to leave kids anywhere.
It's just theoretical. It's just theoretical.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying, I would even if it was leaving a kid.
Right, but you have to choose one. Which one do you trust more?
Well, I wouldn't leave my kid anyway. Like, I wouldn't leave a kid, and I think parents have a duty to protect
but
their
just
kids,
theoretically, which one would you choose?
I'm not going to answer that because I wouldn't choose either.
You wouldn't. Okay, let's put it this way. There's a dude named Barry. He's got kids, and he goes, I have no choice. I have to leave my kids either with the clergyman or at the drag show. I don't have a choice. Something crazy's happening. They're right next to each other. He says, where do I leave my kids? Where do you think Barry should leave his kids?
Well, again, I wouldn't want to leave kids anywhere.
Barry doesn't have a choice. He doesn't have a choice. He's in this horrible
But
predicament.
Ethan, I'm not Barry. I can't answer that
Well,
question.
he's
I'm not
asking
Barry.
you for advice. Quick, Oli, where should I put my kids?
You put me on the spot. You know, I wouldn't, as an adult, like I would say
Oli,
to Barry,
as a
just be with your
Catholic,
kids.
I find it very concerning that you are hesitant to even answer that question.
No, I'm saying it doesn't matter whether it's a Catholic church, a drag show, or even an after-school club where it's, you know, the teachers aren't present. I wouldn't leave the kid anywhere. I wouldn't leave the kid at some weekend activity, like a sports activity. I think the parents should always be there.
Right.
So it's not a question of a church versus, you know, whatever.
There's going to be some fucked up kids. Especially if you consider anyone under 18 to be a child. You're never going to leave that person's side until they are 18 years old. What do you think, Charlie? I agree. I wholeheartedly agree.
But that's not reasonable. Parents can't always be with their kids. I mean, that's...
No, of course it's not always reasonable, but I'm just saying in an ideal scenario, you know, because look, there are cases that happen, many cases that don't happen, but I'm just saying you've always got to be careful because there are people out there
let's
that are
assume that you're a
opportunists.
good Christian and you say, I'd leave them with the Catholic Church. We've talked about the number of kids who are doing irreversible transitioning in America. It's very, very small. We're talking like 250 a year by my estimate. And that's based on government data. I know you dispute it. You know, there's a recent report that came out.
I just want to pause here because I want to go back, since he went back to this irreversible transition stuff. I do want to make it clear that in general, the timeline for transition up until the age of puberty, there's no medical intervention. It's only when a kid is about to start puberty that they would start them on puberty blockers, and those are completely reversible. And those aren't just prescribed for trans youth. They were originally made to treat precocious puberty. So for instance, if a cis girl is SA'd, her body might think that it is time to start having babies. So it'll start giving the signals to begin puberty at a very young age. And the puberty blockers will go in and bind to those receptors in the pituitary gland that would be receiving those signals to start that process. And it just blocks that from happening. So then when the kid gets to puberty age, they go off of those, everything resumes as normal, and they go through puberty. And now that's also being used in the treatment of trans kids. And that has been, I believe, since either the 80s or the 90s, the method of treatment for trans youth. So this is not new. It's not experimental. It's not irreversible. And it definitely predates TikTok. But before the age of puberty, when they would start puberty blockers, a trans kid transitions just socially. It's a haircut, a change of clothing, right? It's shopping on the left side of the store instead of the right side, as well as a different name and pronouns. All of this can be undone and is generally not, none of these steps are taken without being advised by a mental health professional. There's usually a lot of gender therapy involved before these kind of measures are taken.
This came out, I believe, in 2021, called the Independent Commission on Sexual Abuse in the Church. It was a huge government commission to look at this openly and honestly and try to figure out what's going on. 2,900 and 3,200 clergy members were involved in sexual abuse of minors during that period in France. It's estimated that they abused around 330,000 kids. Now, if you do a percentage of that, and this is really kind of surprising to me, and tell me what you think. Assuming there are around 15,000 to 20,000 clergy members in France at any given time, the percentage of clergymen involved in abuse of minors would be 15 to 20%.
Yeah, that's absolutely horrifying. And also there's, in Ireland as well, there was a lot of abuse that was covered up. And no, it doesn't matter.
Seems like that affects more kids.
That is equally wrong. Whoever exposes kids, it doesn't matter whether it's a church or not.
Raping a kid is equally as wrong as going to a drag show?
Look, it's equally wrong if someone abuses a kid. So that's what I'm saying here.
Okay.
So if a kid is being abused,
is there any history of a child being abused at a drag show?
When drag shows are sexually explicit,
is that the same as raping them?
That is also child abuse. I'm just saying, if a drag queen performs a sexually explicit act in front of kids, that is abuse.
If we're worried about the kids, you're a member of an organization, which by my estimate, which again, it's just an estimate, but 15 to 20% of the clergy members are sexual predators. Why is it that you're focused on the drag shows and not the Catholic Church when per capita and the volume is way more in the Catholic Church?
Well, the specific organization Gays Against Groomers is focused solely on the issue of indoctrinating children, exposing them to sex. If it was called, Catholics Against Groomers, that would be focused on that issue. But it's a specific issue. Not every organization can focus on every issue. It's the job of the Pope and the Catholic Church to vigorously investigate that, because it's disgusting for any person, whether a clergy member or not, to abuse a child.
So it's the job of the Catholic Church to investigate the Catholic Church, but it's not the job of gender clinics to investigate gender clinics.
Let's say a whole building, it's on fire, but in the backyard, there's like a doghouse that's on fire. There's no dog in it, by the way. It's just a small structure. And you're telling the fire department, we need to put out the doghouse fire. Don't worry about the fucking massive apartment building that's on fire. Let's put out the doghouse. To me, that seems like you're focused on the wrong thing. What's the point of focusing on the doghouse when the whole building is on fire, right?
Well, no, I mean, I talk up on my Twitter about all forms of abuse. If there's somebody that abuses a kid, if there's a news story, I do share on that. So, but I'm just saying the specific organization Gays Against Groomers focuses on a specific subject. But you're right, all forms of abuse are incredibly wrong, and they should also get light shed on them. 100%.
Are you interested in firearm deaths of kids? Because that's the leading death, actually, of kids in America today.
Yeah, that's absolutely horrific. What we see every day with schools being shut up, it's absolutely horrifying.
Right. But somehow the drag
children,
show
children should be, Ethan, we're on the same page.
I just don't understand why the drag show is more pertinent, because you're doing a tour, right? You're doing all the right wings. You even wrote a book, for Pete's sake, called Gender Madness. Why is this topic so important when we're talking about protecting kids and there's just these incredibly more pertinent issues? Firearm deaths, the leading cause of death in kids, and you're talking about an organization with 15 to 20% of sexual predators. I mean, it just seems odd that the entire right-wing apparatus is focused on trans issues. Do you find that odd? Why are they all so focused on trans issues?
Well, I mean, they talk about a lot of other issues as well, but what's happening at the moment is there is a lot of...
Right, they talk about a lot of issues, but I think we can all agree that that's kind of the most pertinent for them, right?
Correct, because it is a very big subject right now, because we're seeing, every day these news stories of children with horrific stories at gender clinics. We're seeing, drag queens, not all drag queens, like I said, but we're seeing drag shows where they're doing very sexually explicit things. And it's become a recent phenomenon in the last few years, and it's rising every day. So the reason conservatives speak up is because it's a rising issue. They're trying to counter it before it gets even more out of hand, because, we're seeing some very sad things. The Nashville police still haven't released the manifesto, but when Audrey Hale initially shut up that school, they said that the person's gender ideology may have played a role. They believe there was...
Oh, but that's silly. Do you think the New Testament is child appropriate?
Yeah, there's great teachings in the Bible that it's all about kindness and loving thy neighbor.
Roman 1:26 to 27. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. For their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women, and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. Why is it that you feel entitled to be gay when it clearly states
like I said, Ethan, like I said earlier, this book was written, a long time ago, where ideologies were different. And
Ollie, come on, we can't play that game where you pick and choose
Ethan,
the ones you like. That's silly.
You can't interpret every single line and take it as gospel. You have to choose the bits that are...
You can't take the Bible as gospel. You can't take the Bible as gospel, Ethan. Incredible. No notes. I mean, at this point, I just applaud Ethan for continuing this conversation. I'm exhausted just witnessing this. And I do want to point out that Oli made the connection between the shooter and trans ideology, which is pretty unfortunate. But if you look at the number of shootings committed by trans people compared to the number of shootings committed by cis people. I don't know. I'm just saying, if gender identity somehow plays a role, the problem clearly isn't the trans people.
There's a lot of lines that speak against homosexuality, but not a lot of lines that speak against transgender. So why is it that transgender, you should be more concerned about the fact that you are a homosexual? That seems to be a great sin.
Yeah,
well, again, like I told you, you don't have to interpret every single thing from the Bible, because
there's like a lot of anti-gay lines.
This was written in a time society
Okay, let
was
me ask you
completely
this
different,
then.
so you can't interpret every single
difference?
word, but you can choose parts of the Bible that are relevant to you and the modern society and learn from them, like kindness, which is a very important message.
Do you think it's kind to tell a suicidal child that they can't transition?
No, but I think adults have a responsibility to help that child's mental health support. So whether that's therapy sessions,
If a child is suicidal, do you believe it's okay for them to transition?
Well, the problem with what you're saying is that's the argument that many gender clinics use to coerce parents to transition their kids. But you actually have to treat the real issues, which is maybe the kid is suffering from depression or they have struggles with other
What do you mean the real issues?
issues.
No, but this is a real issue. Kids are suicidal because of their gender dysphoria. I mean, that's a real issue.
But Ethan, what I'm trying to say is if you put a vulnerable kid that's already struggling with a mental health on very high doses of hormones or puberty blockers,
no.
That is only,
that's after they decide. That's after they decide. This kid is suicidal. The only way to save their life, as you hear from a lot of people, is to help them transition. What is wrong with that?
No, correct. You hear that a lot, but
has it ever happened? Has a child transitioning ever saved a child's life?
Well, you need to address the mental health issues. If a kid is
has it ever saved a child's life?
Transitioning?
Yeah.
Yes, of course, there will be cases where.
So if it saved even one child's life, then where do you get off preventing this from happening? You say one child's all that matters. If you can admit to me that a child transitioning saved their life, even one of them, why would you support a movement that outlaws it? You support legislation that makes it illegal. Why is that?
Because firstly, these are kids, they cannot consent to this. They do not understand the long-term consequences. But you don't look at what happens later down the line, Ethan, like 6 years down the line.
We got to stick on this point. You said that transitioning has saved a child's life. Let's forget about all the other static. Let's forget about all the other static. Why is it that you would want to outlaw a medical procedure that saved a child's life? That's not kind, is it?
No, you have to support the kids' mental health, but you cannot put them on hormones.
Do you believe that it should be illegal? Do you believe that it should be illegal for kids to transition?
I believe for medical transitions, it should be 18 plus, yes.
Even if the kid is going to kill himself, as you admitted, it saved the child's life. You said that. So you believe this kid should kill themselves rather than transition?
Absolutely not. Don't try to put words in my mouth. Kids need mental health.
No, hey, I'm not trying to put any words in your mouth. I'm just trying to reconcile. You are saying, on one hand, that transitioning saved the kid's life, and also saying that transitioning shouldn't be allowed until they're 18 plus. So this child has no recourse other than to kill themselves in this hypothetical situation we've created.
In this hypothetical situation, instead of that, actually take the kids to somewhere that's a safe place where they can be surrounded by therapists.
Right, they do that. But again, I don't want to focus on the static because this is a real situation.
Okay, but also the argument that he's making is that a kid who is suicidal should just go to therapy. Well, the thing is, the therapist is going to be the one to evaluate that and come to the conclusion that the kid is suicidal because of the gender dysphoria, and the way to treat that, fix the dysphoria, transition. The mental health support in question is that. That's the treatment. Unless he's suggesting conversion therapy, which kind of sounds like the case, and that is actually torture.
Let's stay focused here, Oli. One kid saved his life. You're telling that kid you cannot get that procedure. That's correct?
I'm saying that kids can't consent to this. Kids need better mental health support. So there should be a focus on
18
mental
plus.
Health
You're
support
saying this kid cannot get the procedure that saved his life. So the kid would kill himself.
No, you give the kid.
But then why did you say that it saves kids' lives, Oli? Don't you understand? You're not making sense.
I'm saying that there will be some kids that may feel better and feel like their life is being saved after that. But
you agreed with me, Oli, just a few minutes ago that transitioning has saved kids' lives.
Well, like anything in life, it can save lives, but also a lot of people.
Like anything in
will
life?
become-
What does that mean?
A thing?
What
No,
else?
a lot of people will become suicidal later down the line because their body is completely messed up. So it's about
99% don't regret it.
No, I'm just saying that it's informed consent. Kids can't consent. If
Well,
a kid is feeling that way,
kids can't consent to anything. What are we doing? We're
correct.
not allowing them to. Kids can't consent to go to church. Kid can't consent to go to school. Kids can't consent to anything. We as parents make the best decision we can for the welfare of the kid. Don't you agree? I mean, this whole idea of consent is kind of moot when you consider all the things kids do in their lives every day.
well, it's like a little kid that wants to be a dinosaur. Do you suddenly give them a surgery?
Do you think that wanting to be a dinosaur is comparable to gender dysphoria, which is a known medical condition?
I'm saying that some kids.
You said
go through
it's like
phases.
kids wanting to be dinosaurs, Oli. I don't understand the comparison.
Well, no, it is. It's like some kids change their mind about certain things. They're not mature enough to make these decisions.
Do
So
you think
a kid might
wanting
say
to
their
be a
parents-
dinosaur is comparable to being trans?
I'm saying if a 10-year-old kid dresses up as a dinosaur every day, they tell their dad they're a Tyrannosaurus.
Has that happened? Can you cite that happening?
You've been speaking about theoretical things. I'm speaking about.
Well, no. Well, we're talking about theoretical.
Would you transition a child?
We're talking about theoretical situations, but they are real happening in the real world. There are kids whose lives are being saved because, and this is the small amount of kids who undergo it, very small amount, that do it under doctors, supervision, and panels and stuff. It's saving their lives. This is happening, okay? People are not, as far as I know, and maybe you can correct me, saying I'm a dinosaur, I need to transition into a dinosaur.
No, I'm saying, kids want different things. They don't understand or comprehend.
I notice you're saying I'm saying a lot. You say things, but you don't like to stay accountable to it. You say, no, I'm saying this. No, I'm saying this. No, I'm saying this. Why won't you give me definitive answers?
Well, I'm equating it. You know what? It is the same. If a child wants to be a dinosaur, you don't cut off their
it's the same
body parts.
It's the same.
It's the same as being
gender.
It's the same as medically transitioning a child and giving them surgery.
Good. I'm glad you said that. Gender dysmorphia is a known medical condition. Is there any literature about transitioning to be a dinosaur? Not that you know of. Right. But you said it's the same. But clearly it's not, right? Because
no, I'm equating
transitioning is accepted.
I'm equating a kid.
Mm-hmm.
This is absolutely an insane argument to hear from him. From Oli London, who for years transphobes have pointed at as an example of, look, this is what these people want to do. They want to change everything. For saying he was fucking transracial, which does not exist. But of course now he's denouncing all that as his bizarre behaviors. A wild ride we're taking here today, folks.
You don't just suddenly say, if a kid feels a certain way, oh, we're going to do this operation, we're going to give you hormones. Kids
of course that doesn't happen, Oli.
That
doesn't happen.
Do it as an adult.
That doesn't happen. You have a child who's experiencing gender dysmorphia so severe that they're going to kill themselves. Dysphoria, excuse me. They're undergoing panels and doctors and stuff. And this kid, we know, and this has happened, either we intervene or the child kills themselves. What's your decision?
Most kids grow out of gender dysphoria.
That's not what I asked. Why can't you answer? Most kids do not grow out of gender dysmorphia. That's a small number of them, and 99% who get the operations don't regret it. You have to answer this, Oli. This is important. If there's a child that's going to kill itself unless it gets gender-affirming care, what is your decision? Give them the treatment or not?
No, you give them mental health support instead. You do not.
No. That's not what I'm asking. If this kid is suicidal, which is a known phenomenon, this happens. Do you let them get the treatment, or do you make them wait till they're 18?
You give them other support instead. That's
so they kill themselves.
No,
How is that kind, Oli?
How
is that kind that you're letting children kill themselves instead of letting them get gender-affirming, life-saving care, which, by the way, happens only irreversible gender care, gender surgeries and stuff only happens like 250 times a year.
No, it doesn't. It happens.
Well, you have no statistics to back that up.
Well, there's a clinic in Oregon. I can send you the statistics of. There's a clinic in Oregon that does at least 300 surgeries on kids a year. So that's just one clinic.
That's impossible. That's not true.
There's 60 clinics in the US that are pediatric.
Over years. Yes, 60 over years. So, but again, there's 50 million kids in America, Oli. That's not a lot.
But I'm saying there's 60 gender clinics that are performing these surgeries every single week across the country. So look it up and see how many.
Let's say that of the 1,000 There's 10 kids who are going to kill themselves. Do we let them get this treatment or not?
Again, you give the kids mental health support.
You're choosing for them to kill themselves, Ollie.
No, I'm not. Don't try to say that, because
but you
is a very
are.
sensitive
But that's
subject.
what you're saying, Ollie.
I'm not saying
that
that
is
Ethan.
what
I'm
you're saying.
give the
You're
kids-
denying them life-saving, gender-affirming care.
No, I'm saying give the kids mental health support until they
you're
can
you're saying
become an
use
adult.
this avenue that doesn't work, that's not going to work to prevent you from killing yourself. You're telling them you cannot have the antidote that's going to save your life. You can only do the therapy that I approve of. You can only do the therapy that I say is okay for you, Ollie. You went through this whole gender transition. Why do you deny people the journey that you yourself had?
Because I had that journey as an adult, and even though I regret it, I was an adult. But kids cannot consent. So I'll say it again:
kids
should
can't
not be on
consent
any
to
form of
anything.
hormone.
Kids can't consent to anything.
But Ethan, this is irreversible. We're not just
no,
talking
it's
about
not.
something-
Sometimes it's not. Most of the times it is irreversible. And
No,
when it's not reversible, it's done under extreme care, under doctor supervision. You want this kid to kill themselves, Ollie. How do you live with that?
And I think it's also very important to note that the irreversible stuff, which is such just a minute sliver of the trans healthcare that is being provided for minors, it pales in comparison to all of the other stuff. And the reversible trans healthcare is falling under the same umbrella with this legislation and being banned because of the fear mongering around the other stuff. So if you only have a problem with the irreversible stuff, then okay, go after that. But that's clearly not what it's about.
How do you betray the community, the trans community that you're a part of? You sold yourself out for some attention and some money. You are dooming kids to kill themselves. How do you live with that? Before it was cute, silly stuff about transracial and BTS and pop stuff, and it was just silly nonsense about little racist stuff about Korean people having tiny penises. But now you're actually delving into transphobic, violent transphobia that is going to result in kids dying. You're going to have to reckon with that, Ollie.
No, absolutely not. You're trying to paint me out as saying this.
I'm only
trying
saying
to say
what
that
you
kids
said.
Cannot consent. No, Ethan.
Kids
I'm not
can't
saying
consent to anything.
Kids cannot consent to irreversible hormones or surgeries, Ethan.
Okay, a kid needs to get his leg
consent to that.
removed because he has leg cancer. Should he be able to get the leg removed?
Well, if he has a cancer, yes. But I'm
Okay,
saying
so
that
what's the
you
fucking
can't-
difference? He can't consent to have his leg removed. That's irreversible.
Well, many of these kids are being pushed into it. Many grow out of gender dysphoria. If you Google right
But
now,
I'm
it's a Canadian
telling
study.
you, kids kill themselves if they don't get this treatment. In the rare case that it's that severe, about 250 a year. Gender affirming care is mental health support.
There are other ways.
It's actually
there are other ways of helping kids.
the American Institute of Psychiatry and Kids Health Pediatrics, they all agree that the correct care for children with dysmorphia is gender affirming care. Do you know more than Pediatrics Association and Psychiatrists Association?
Yeah, because all of these
You do know
companies,
more.
they made $2.2 billion transitioning kids last year. So it's a multi-billion-dollar industry with a lot of powerful.
So people make money from it. So therefore, we shouldn't let kids save their lives.
No, you can provide. I'm not going to keep going on about this same thing. You can provide kids with the right mental health support that doesn't include putting them on harmful hormones that can cause irreversible issues. And when they
You're
become
right. We should
adults-
make it free. People shouldn't be charged for it.
Let's fucking go.
No.
No, I'm just not going to keep going on about the same thing, Ethan. I need to go anyway. It's quite late.
Holy shit.
I want to tell you something. You really have sold your soul in this one. You know what I mean? Like before it was
Ethan,
cute
I
and
haven't
innocent,
sold my
but this
soul. I'm
new
trying to
one
help
is
people.
really sick. And I mean, the
Ethan.
galls of you to sell a fucking lunch pail with a trans person on it while telling people that they're grooming kids. I mean, you're just a fucking hypocrite, dude.
Ethan, you said some horrific comments about Ben Shapiro saying that he should be gassed like in the Holocaust. So you shouldn't be.
I didn't say
lecturing people
that.
on what to say.
I said,
you
I'll tell you exactly what I said. And how dare you say such a... I don't care.
said that.
I made a joke
you
that
said about Ben Shapiro.
he's perpetuating anti-Semitism, and therefore, if there's another, then he can go, and I'd be
But it's
happy
not something to joke
I'd be
about,
happy to
Ethan.
go
It's
right
not
behind
something
him.
to joke
I am
about.
Jewish though, so chill out.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying it's not something to joke about. So, when you're trying to criticize for me for certain things,
So-
you've also said some things that are very harmful as well.
Well, hold
so you should
on.
also take accountability.
So you're admitting that what you say about trans people is offensive?
No, I'm talking
Well,
about
how
my
is it
past
comparable to what
behaviors
I
have
said?
been harmful. I'm talking about my past behaviors, have been harmful,
I'm
but I'm
not talking
addressing that
about your
now and
past
trying to
behavior.
help
I'm
people.
talking about what you're doing now that endangers children because you're trying to make a
Now
quick
I'm helping
buck.
people. Now, no, I'm helping people, Ethan.
You're helping Tucker Carlson spread propaganda that's going to kill trans people. And you're selling a book called Gender Madness. After you, how long have you been how long have you been detransitioned? And you're writing a book already?
It's been 7 months.
7 months, Ollie? I mean, you were
Ethan,
trans for years. How are you going to spend 7 months as a man and then presume to tell people how to live their lives? That's doesn't even make sense, Ollie. That's not enough time to give me an informed decision about what it means to transition, especially when you lived as a trans person for so long.
Yeah, but the book is about how I got to where I was, what led me to that, and how people struggle with different identities. It's actually a self-help book, so it's very positive, empowering about different ways people can help themselves.
Gender Madness. Here's your best friend, Jamie Mitchell, who's the founder of Gays Against Groomers, supporting, well, here, just watch.
What's happening now would make, I think Joseph Mengele, I believe that was his name, the Nazi doctor, this puts him to shame.
Do you believe that's an appropriate analogy?
Well, Joseph Mengele tortured and performed horrific medical procedures on kids. What
Jewish
they're doing
kids
today.
during the Holocaust.
He also committed a genocide against trans people, by the way.
He committed a genocide against trans people as well.
Any experimentation on kids is wrong.
Do you believe that doctors are performing Nazi-like experiments on trans kids?
Doctors are experimenting on kids.
To what end? What is the experiment?
Any medical mutilation on kids is bad. And,
An experiment underlies a thesis. What is their thesis?
I'm saying there's no long-term data on how does this affect a kid.
Yes, there is. 99% don't regret it.
How does this affect a kid 20 years down the line? Because
they're happy.
See issues
99% are happy.
We see issues
27
with their bone
studies.
density.
All right, Ollie. We're gonna anyway. Thank you for spending your time. I do appreciate you coming on.
But no, it's good to talk.
It was something. But I do think that since God created,
Ethan,
God created trans people. You know what I mean? And when kingdom come, you're gonna have to answer for what you're doing. This is not kindness. Jesus does not hate trans kids.
Jesus doesn't hate anyone, but what I've been saying throughout the interview, and we've spoke about this already, is that I'm simply speaking up about we shouldn't do this to kids. I know you're trying to make the argument that this can lead to.
It's not happening to kids, Ollie.
No, you can look on Google.
I've looked up every single thing you've said. I fact checked every single thing you said. It's all propaganda. It's all lies.
Look at
I've
Dr.
systematically dismantled every single point you have.
They're profiting from this. It's $70,000 they make from a girl.
All right, Oli London, who is in favor of kids killing themselves. Thank you for calling. But that's
not even funny to joke about things like that.
Oh, I'm not joking, my friend.
I've been talking about mental health support. That's the real issue here. We need to help people with their struggles and not be putting them on medication.
Oli London, who's in favor of kids killing themselves.
Ethan, not cool. Right. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Well,
today.
It is not cool. Actually, that's putting it mildly. It's actually demonic.
No, it's not cool that you're trying to say that I'm pro for that.
That's literally what you're doing. It's what you've said, my friend.
No, it's not. It's about, I've been saying about we need to give mental health support instead of putting all of these kids on
gender affirmation is mental health support.
We'll agree to disagree, and good luck.
Okay, you're a demon.
Oh my God. You're a demon. It's incredible. Holy shit. I wasn't expecting him to go that hard. I wasn't expecting it to be that good. I really wasn't. Overall, wow. I'm glad I watched that. I think Ethan did great. I think he made some really great points. I think that he had Oli, really running in circles trying to get out from under his own bullshit, which was just so good to watch. And I think it's really clear that Oli's just a grifter who will do anything and say anything for money and attention. And I'm really happy that was called out, that the receipts were brought up, statistics, studies. I mean, they came loaded with the facts. And they just really held him to his words. And I think that's really important. I would love to see more shit like this. As so many of these anti-trans grifters, they have a few little set talking points, and they're so often able to just shout into the void, into their echo chambers. But when they're in a situation like this, with their ideas actually challenged, it just so clearly does not hold up. But yeah, this was very refreshing. I enjoyed this a lot, so I hope you did too. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.